If I seem excited during this episode, you'll have to excuse me. Squash Publishing has just reprinted an out-of-print book that has provided me with more performance pieces than just about any other book. Of course, I have my favorite routines, but Unreal by Bruce Bernstein covers a lot of ground not only in terms of the material, but also in the performance environments in which it will play. There's bound to be something that interests almost every magician or mentalist. There are drawing duplications, book tests, a Q&A routine, his legendary 10-card poker deal, chair tests, psychological subtleties, headline predictions, bank nights, card miracles, and much, much more. Obviously, this is not your run-of-the-mill garden variety mentalism book. No, this is practical, hard-hitting material that's been honed over a lifetime in the mystery arts. The author has been creating solutions for both magicians and mentalists and then publishing them all the way from the early 80s through to the 2000s. In fact, most of this material has been culled from previously published and highly sought-after limited edition print runs. He's won awards from the Psychic Entertainers Association for his creative approach to the mystery arts. And now the best of tricks from Bruce Bernstein's earlier publications are in an attractive hardcover book with almost 240 pages, put out by Gabe Fahuri and Squash Publishing. The book is also illustrated by the venerable Tony Dunn. And while this book was originally published in 2013, it fairly quickly went out of print and is just now being reprinted after secondary market prices started to climb. So you don't want to miss picking up your copy before it's out of print again. But before we get too far, you're probably wondering, who is this Bruce Bernstein? He's been called the most interesting man in Chicago by the Chicago Tribune, and with good reason. According to the article, he's a musical composer, an amateur archer, Japanese sword restorer, boomerang carver, and of course, more germane to our discussion, a mind reader. At one point, he demonstrated magic behind the counter over at Magic Inc. in Chicago. So he's well versed in magic, even though his passion is in creating mentalism and mental-flavored magic. He isn't really a performer for the public per se, but he is a consultant to public performers and has been providing solutions for decades to professionals who need those effective solutions for their paying audiences. In fact, many of today's top mentalists and mental magic pros perform material written by Bruce Bernstein. And even though I'm not a top performer, I too count myself in the group of performers who use material from this book in paying gigs. Now that we understand the author's context, let's discuss this material, and what a tremendous selection of material it is. The book is extremely well organized, with each chapter grouping similar material culled from previously published works. The categories are broadly mind reading, book tests, drawing duplications, an impromptu Q&A, etc. Predictions, which includes a show-stopping trick where you predict the name and exact moment that a heckler will interrupt your show. This is perfect for those moments when you have a problem child out in the audience who's distracting the rest of the crowd from enjoying the performance. There's a whole chapter on tricks with money, which include many versions of the bank night plot, allowing you to win these pseudo gambling demonstrations or even allow your audience to predict the amount of money in your piggy bank. The chapter on playing cards, affectionately called The Devil's Picture Book, includes Psych Out, a 10-card poker deal that Max Maven raved about, as well as Couples, an amazing version of Paul Curry's Out of This World. There are plenty of other good card tricks, but I'm just giving you the high level of what each chapter is about and what you can expect when you pick up Unreal. The Reading People section gives you the ability to predict things about your participants, as well as give some basic cold readings in front of a large crowd that will amaze everyone. Psychometry, for those who don't know it, is the ability to return borrowed objects to their owners, or match up information with the person who gave it by simply picking up on the energy of the participant. There are some really devious methods and effects in here that are sure to make it into your act. The magic chapter is a smaller portion of the book, exploring the ideas of storytelling within mentalism, and definitely have more of a psychic flavor. For example, draining someone's strength and then giving it back, all within the context of an inspirational message. Or getting someone to use a pendulum to find the only marked pieces of some torn up business cards. The final chapter of tricks, A Matter of Time, has 13 variations on one main theme or effect, teaching you to not stop thinking too soon, while also giving you a myriad of techniques and presentations for this blockbuster effect. It's hard to describe, but it's an interesting thought exercise to go through and see the different ways that you could present this, or the different ways that it could be accomplished. It's not all tricks though. The final chapter is called Techniques, and in it he teaches you his version of the center tear, how to make your own practical Swami gimmick. And there are several utilitarian switches for which you'll find many applications. For example, I happen to use one of these switches in a Barry Richardson routine. But not only does the book have tricks, the author has interspersed useful and thought-provoking essays between the chapters. For example, you'll hear his take on reading between the lines, or how to approach a trick description and make it yours or go further than what's on the written page. He shares a story where he was interacting with some of his Chicago magic buddies and he was blowing up a trick that he had recently read, how it wasn't practical, would never work, and one of his buddies, who is a performing pro, asked him what made him think it wouldn't work because it was currently in his professional show. He takes that idea and helps you see how you can get more from the tricks that you already have. Getting Out of the Line of Fire explores the idea of making your effects more bulletproof so that you can't be proven to be a fake. His essay on magic and mentalism, I think, is required reading for anyone who is a pure mentalist, or even a magician who has not considered adding some mentalism to their act. Presentation excuses the methodology, encourages you to come up with interesting and plausible ways to cover any of the dirty work necessary. Disclaiming disclaimers are his thoughts on using disclaimers whether you are a mentalist or a magician. He also shares his thoughts on magic exposure, gathering information from your audience, covering some of the techniques, as well as the possible gambits to cover the need to do so. Basic chops, which are the categories or ideas that Bruce thinks that you need to know to be an effective mentalist. And his credo about practice. How much work should you be putting into your craft? So what makes this material so great? In a word, it's so practical. Imagine for a second that you're on stage, you're getting ready to reveal a word that someone has thought of, and it turns out that you have the wrong word or they have the wrong word. Regardless, you're up there in front of everyone, the pressure's on, the sweat is pouring off of your face. You really have no way to escape the fact that you don't have the word that they're thinking of. But if you've studied Bruce Bernstein and you know the mentalist's insurance policy, you're always prepared for this situation, and you can reveal the word that they were thinking of even when things go completely wrong. That's a great example of exactly how practical this material is. And it's just one simple example of the genius that exudes from every trick in this book. You'll read these descriptions and you'll instantly understand the impact that they can have on your audiences. Plus, they're just so commercial and crowd-pleasing. Imagine that you're having your participants mix some envelopes, and when they're satisfied that everything's mixed, you hand out the envelopes in the order that they've mixed them, and when people open them, revealing that inside are letters, it spells out the name of the company you're working for, or the honoree at the event, or even your own messaging. Eat at Joe's is a commercial classic, and I almost always close my shows with it. And if you haven't seen Doug DeMint's alternate hands-off handling, you can find that in his book, Calculated Thoughts. He also has one of the best openers for a mentalism show. But more than being just a great opener, he also explains why it's such a great opener and can help you think through what's necessary for a good opener, whether or not you choose to use his. You can clearly tell that he's put a lot of thought and attention into structuring these routines. Plus, almost everything in the book is easy to do. That doesn't mean that you don't have to put practice into it. Remember, he has an entire essay on that subject. But you won't feel like the work is overwhelming. You'll be willing to do the work to try the tricks. The tricks are not only easy to perform, they're also easy to put together. If you have the basic office supplies that's typical for a lot of mentalism performances, like envelopes, glue sticks, pads of paper, playing cards, plus the typical magician's props that you probably have around, like a thumb tip and or a Swami gimmick, you'll be set to perform almost everything in here. In fact, there's even a trick called emergency mentalism, so that if you're ever asked to perform for a larger venue and have nothing with you, if you have access to some index cards, you can perform a full Q&A act. So if you make this up ahead of time and have it in your personal bag or pockets, you are always ready to perform for a full crowd of people with a professional routine. Speaking of which, I mentioned that I use a lot of these tricks in my professional shows, but I've also used many of these routines in casual situations. For example, his sporting prediction is a great close-up piece. You give your friend a sealed envelope to hold onto as you go into a ball game, and at the end of the game, on your way out, your friend opens the envelope and reveals two predictions. the winner of the game, as well as some other detail about it, like the MVP or a specific stat. I literally performed this for a coworker at my first ever Cubs game. But even though something like this can be done casually, it can just as easily be adapted to a professional caliber platform piece, which really cuts down on the amount of work you have to do to learn 2 different shows for 2 different performance venues and audiences. And this is true of many of the pieces in this book. They'll play as small or as big as you want. With a tiny modification, the aforementioned Eat It Joes can be a close-up wallet piece done with your business cards. Or it can even be performed as part of your virtual show. Again, something I've done. The reprinted book is $75 at full retail, and I paid a little over $50 back in May 2014, which with inflation is about $65 in 2023 money. So do I think this is a good value? Well, as already stated, I use a lot of material in this book for my shows, and I've definitely more than made my money back even with my part-time professional status. So the question is, how much is it worth to you to find surefire methods that are easy to do, practical and commercial, and can be adapted to perform in a number of performance environments? For me, if I didn't have this book, I would still buy it today for $75. As previously mentioned, Bruce has some thought-provoking essays interspersed throughout the text. And toward the end, he shares part of his origin story. If you take the time to study it, you'll not only be inspired, but you'll also be introduced to other authors and creators that you'll probably want to study. In this final section of the book, he has some very interesting and controversial opinions about Uri Geller. And if you want to know more about Uri and how you can achieve some of the same effects as this master spoonbender, then be sure to check out this video. As always, my friends, I appreciate you watching, and until next time, keep reading.